People talk themselves into a jail cell sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, people want to blame me for it. That's the only case I've ever heard of.
They said, Vlad, you the police.
I'm the police, right. That's the only interview that I've heard of, because I heard that Las Vegas PD is going to use that in his trial, and Las Vegas PD reached out to me a whole bunch of times to try to get all my raw footage, and I've always just ignored them. Because I don't. My thing is, like, if you sit down with me, Maino, I will not turn around and then work with authorities to try to bust you over something we did together.
Right.
I've always been like this.
I actually seen you on the news saying that the feds wanted some tapes of you, and that you was like, nah.
It was Jimmy Henchman. I interviewed Jimmy Henchman.
You refused to give them to him.
I interviewed Jimmy Henchman.
I think it was CNN or something.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I did a bunch of interviews about it. I interviewed Jimmy. It was over the phone. He was in jail. He was getting ready to have his retrial. He got an appeal for he was doing like double life. There's an appeal coming up. We did an interview. We talked about the Tupac stuff, the Tupac stuff, and then, I mentioned some stuff that like 50 had said about him, and I think that probably got him a little mad. So he started talking, and I don't know about you, but when I'm doing interviews, sometimes I don't catch everything the person's saying because I'm thinking about the next question, and you see what I'm saying? So I don't catch every detail when it's happening, and sometimes I'll go back and listen to it and go, oh wow, I didn't realize he said that. He called me up the next day, and he said, hey, listen, my lawyer went through the audio you just put out, and he said that it could potentially hurt my case. Can you take it down? I said, sure, no problem. Took it down. Maybe 9 months later, the feds called me, and they said that we need a copy of that interview. They had a copy of it already, because you know how stuff gets reposted? But they wanted the original because in a court environment, you can't just replace something that someone else recorded. You need the original and the person to say, yes, this is the original, it's been unedited, whatever. So I said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. And they're like, well, we're going to put you on stand then. I said, well, then now you'll have to speak to my lawyer if this is where the conversation is going.
There you go.
So I spent $10,000 on a lawyer. And the lawyer basically said that we're not going to agree to do this. And they're like, well, we're going to subpoena the footage. We're going to put him on the stand. And he's like, well, we're going to fight the subpoena and so forth. Make a long story short, they couldn't get a sign-off for the subpoena.
Good.
So my footage was never used in his trial. He ultimately did lose in trial.
Right, but it had nothing to do with you.
My footage didn't help put him there.
Got it.
And look, I understand who Jimmy is.
Right.
I'm not supportive of everything he's done over the years, but whoever comes on my platform, I will do my very best to try to protect them, even if I have to spend more money than I made by even interviewing them, because that's just what I stand on. I'm not looking to really get people busted. I'm not looking to hurt people in any type of way. I'm always very careful about statute of limitations. And I think people hear these...
Why do you think people started to create the narrative about you being the feds?
I was the only person to ask those questions that everyone else was scared to ask in hip hop.
And what kind?
Back in 2008.
All right. So what kind of questions we talking about? So if you got street rappers that's actually talking about the shit that they doing, you asking them about that?
If it's within the statute of limitations.
So you're not asking questions that are like...
I don't ask about stuff they're still doing.
In real time.
Yeah. Like, for example, if a person's claiming a Crip or a Blood or a Latin King or whatever, I'll ask them about that.
Right.
If I interview, and I think some of it kind of got amplified because when I started interviewing guys who came home from prison,
right,
and they're talking about murders, they're talking about kidnappings, they're talking about all types of shootings and stabbings, people don't realize, hey, this person just did 20 years for this.
Right.
They've earned the right to talk about this. Nothing they say is going to ultimately put them back in prison. They've already done the time. Casanova 2 times. I did one of his first interviews. He talked about stuff he did that he went to prison for. 7 years later, he gets arrested, and people say, oh, it was that Vlad interview that put him there.
Right.
Nothing from that interview was ever used in his case. Right? Nothing at all. He went to jail for stuff he did years later. And free Casanova. Like, I've always liked Casanova.
That's right.
But people, oh, see, Casanova did this Vlad interview, and then sure enough, he gets arrested years later for some shit that has nothing to do with the Vlad interview. And that's cool. I take that. Because I felt like before me, nobody was really asking those types of questions. In the same way that you asked Suge those questions that he wasn't happy with, I asked people my version of what you do. And people aren't happy with me either.
I get it, man.
And that's cool.
I get it.
I'll take that.